Jake Martinez wiped the grease from his hands with an old cloth and looked around his repair shop. The place was quiet again. Too quiet. 3 days had passed since his last customer, and the bills were piling up on his desk like snow in winter. The rent for his bay on New Haven Station was due next week, and he did not have enough credits to pay it. He walked over to the window that looked out into the station's main docking area. Ships came and went all day long, but none of them needed repairs. The big companies had their own mechanics now. The small traders could not afford his prices. Jake was stuck in the middle with nowhere to go. The lights in his shop flickered. He needed to pay the power bill, too. Jake sighed and sat down at his workbench. Maybe it was time to give up and find work on one of the big ships. He was a good mechanic, maybe the best on this station, but being good did not pay the bills. The door chime rang. Jake looked up to see a figure in a dark hood standing in his doorway. The person was not very tall and moved carefully, like someone who did not want to be noticed. Jake could not see the face under the hood. "Are you Jake Martinez?" the stranger asked. The voice was soft but clear, a woman's voice. "That's me," Jake said, standing up. "What can I do for you?" The woman stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She looked around the shop, checking the corners and windows. "I need repairs on my ship. Fast repairs." Jake felt a spark of hope. "What kind of ship? What kind of repairs?" "Complete overhaul," the woman said. She reached into her coat and pulled out a credit chip. "I need it done in 48 hours. I'll pay triple your normal rate." Jake stared at the credit chip. Triple rate would solve all his money problems and give him enough to keep the shop running for months. But jobs that paid triple rate usually came with triple trouble. "What's the catch?" Jake asked. The woman pulled back her hood. She had short brown hair and green eyes. Her face was young but tired, like someone who had not slept in days. "No catch. I just need good work done quickly." "Where's the ship?" "Docking Bay 12. It's registered under the name Alex Stone." She handed him the credit chip. "That's half. Payment now. You get the rest when the job is done." Jake took the chip and checked it with his scanner. The credits were real and untraceable. Very expensive untraceable credits. His hands started to shake a little. "What kind of ship are we talking about?" "Small transport. Nothing fancy. It just needs to be ready for a long trip." Jake nodded. "I'll need to see it first." "Check what?" "Needs to be done." Alex Stone smiled for the first time. "Of course. When can you start?" "Right now, if you want." They walked through the station corridors to Docking Bay 12. Alex moved like a soldier, Jake noticed. She kept her eyes moving, watching everyone they passed. Her hand stayed close to something under her coat. Jake had seen enough military types to know the signs. Docking Bay 12 was in the older part of the station. The lights were dimmer here and fewer people walked around. Alex pressed her palm to the security scanner, and the bay doors opened. Jake looked at the ship and felt confused. It was small, maybe big enough for 6 people. The hull was standard gray metal with no markings. The engines looked normal. Everything about it screamed ordinary civilian transport, the kind of ship that a trader or small business owner might use. "This is it?" Jake asked. "This is it," Alex said. "What do you think?" Jake walked around the ship slowly. The hull had some scratches and burn marks. The landing gear needed work. One of the sensor arrays was damaged. Normal wear and tear for a ship that got used a lot. Nothing that would take 48 hours to fix. "I can have this ready in 12 hours, Jake said. "Maybe less." Alex shook her head. "I need a complete overhaul. Everything checked and upgraded. Money is not a problem." Jake shrugged. If she wanted to pay triple rate for simple work, he would not argue. "Okay, I'll need access to all the ship's systems." Alex handed him a datapad with the access codes. The ship is yours for the next 2 days. I'll check back tomorrow. She started to leave, then stopped. Jake? Yeah? Be careful with her. She's more important than she looks. Alex walked away, leaving Jake alone with the ship. He stood there for a moment, wondering what he had gotten himself into. The credits were real. The work looked simple, and he needed the money. What could go wrong? Jake opened the ship's cargo hatch and stepped inside. The interior was as plain as the outside. Standard crew quarters, basic life support, simple controls. But something felt off. The ship was too quiet, too clean. Most transport ships had a lived-in feel, but this one felt like it had just come from a factory. He made his way to the engine room and started his inspection. The engines were standard civilian models, but they had been modified. Someone had added extra cooling systems and reinforced the power couplings. The work was professional, maybe military-grade. Jake found more modifications as he looked deeper. The communications array had military encryption. The life support system could handle toxic environments. The artificial gravity generator was twice as powerful as it needed to be for a ship this size. Someone had spent a lot of money making this ordinary ship extraordinary. Jake wondered who Alex Stone really was, and why she needed a ship that could do more than it appeared to do. But those were not his questions to ask. His job was to fix ships, not solve mysteries. Jake went back to his shop and gathered his tools. He had work to do and 48 hours to do it. Whatever this ship really was, he would make sure it ran better than the day it was built. That was what Jake Martinez did. He fixed things, and he fixed them right. Jake spent the night working on Alex Stone's ship. Every hour brought new surprises. What looked like simple repairs from the outside turned into complex puzzles on the inside. The ship had layers of systems hidden beneath other systems, like a box inside another box. Danny Clark showed up for work the next morning and found Jake elbow deep in the ship's computer core. Danny was 19 years old and had been working as Jake's apprentice for 2 years. He was smart and eager to learn, but he had never seen anything like this ship. Boss, what kind of transport needs quantum processors? Danny asked, looking over Jake's shoulder. The kind that pays triple rate, Jake said without looking up. Hand me the neural interface cable. Danny passed him the cable and watched Jake connect it to the computer core. The screen lit up with code that moved too fast to read. I've never seen encryption like this. It's like the computer is thinking. Jake had been thinking the same thing. Most ship computers were simple things that followed basic commands. This computer seemed to anticipate what he needed before he asked for it. When he tried to access the navigation system, the computer offered him route optimization programs he had never heard of. When he checked the life support, it showed him efficiency improvements that could extend air supplies by 30%. Danny, go get the parts list from my desk, Jake said. We're going to need some special components. Danny ran back to the shop and returned with the list. His eyes went wide when he read it. Boss, some of this stuff is restricted. We'll need special permits just to buy it. I know. Call Lisa Wong. Tell her it's urgent. Lisa Wong ran the best parts supply business in the sector. She had been Jake's friend since they were both starting out, and she knew how to get things that were hard to find. But even Lisa had limits. 2 hours later, Lisa arrived at the docking bay with 3 cases of components. She was a small woman, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked at the plain transport ship and frowned. Jake, what have you gotten yourself into? She asked. A paying job, Jake said, taking the cases from her. What's the problem? Lisa walked around the ship slowly, the same way Jake had done the day before. But she was looking at different things. This hull plating isn't standard civilian grade. See these microsensors built into the metal? That's military stealth coating. Jake stopped what he was doing and looked where she was pointing. He had missed that detail in his first inspection. Are you sure? I've been selling ship parts for 20 years. I know military hardware when I see it. Lisa opened one of the cases and pulled out a component. And these parts you asked for? Half of them are used in Imperial Navy ships. The other half are classified technology that I shouldn't even have. Danny looked nervous. Maybe we should ask Alex who she really works for. Jake thought about the untraceable credits and the way Alex had moved like a soldier. Sometimes it's better not to ask questions. Sometimes it's better to stay alive, Lisa said. Jake, I've heard rumors. There are people looking for a ship. Like this. Important people with big guns. Before Jake could answer, the bay doors opened and Alex walked in. She had changed clothes and now wore a simple gray jumpsuit, but she still moved with that same careful precision. Her eyes went to Lisa immediately. Who's this? Alex asked. Lisa Wong, parts supplier, Jake said. She's okay. Alex studied Lisa. For a moment, then nodded. How's the work coming? Jake showed her what he had found. The modified engines, the advanced computer systems, the hidden sensors in the hull. Alex listened without showing any surprise, as if she already knew about all of it. The ship is more complex than you told me, Jake said. I told you it needed a complete overhaul, Alex replied. Are you having problems? No problems. Just taking longer than I expected. Alex walked over to the computer terminal where Danny was working. Danny had managed to access some of the navigation files, and star charts were displayed on the screen. Alex looked at the charts, and her face went pale. Danny, close that file, she said quietly. I was just trying to update the navigation database. Danny said, close it now. Danny quickly shut down the file, but not before Jake saw what was on the screen. The star charts showed routes through Imperial space, with markers for government facilities and military bases. Some of the markers were colored red, which usually meant classified or restricted areas. Alex moved to the computer and entered it. Series of commands. The screen went black, then displayed a simple message. Access denied. From now on, only touch the systems I tell you to touch, Alex said. Her voice was still soft, but there was steel underneath it. Jake felt the job getting more complicated by the hour. Alex, maybe you should tell us what we're really working on here. Alex was quiet for a long moment. She looked at Jake, then at Danny, then at Lisa. What you're working on is a ship that needs to be ready tomorrow night. That's all you need to know. Lisa shook her head. Jake, this is bigger than ship repairs. I think you should... She stopped talking when Alex's hand moved to her coat. The movement was small and quick, but they all saw it. Jake realized that Alex was armed and ready to use whatever weapon she carried. Lisa was just leaving, Jake said. Quickly, Lisa looked at him for a moment, then packed up her tools. Be careful, Jake. Some jobs aren't worth the money. After Lisa left, Alex relaxed a little. I'm sorry about that, but this work has to stay quiet. We understand, Jake said, though he was not sure he understood anything anymore. The rest of the day passed in tense silence. Jake and Danny worked on the ship while Alex watched them. She knew a lot about the systems they were repairing. Jake noticed. When Danny had trouble with the power coupling, Alex showed him the right way to connect it. When Jake could not figure out a sensor calibration, Alex gave him the exact specifications he needed. She was not just the owner of this ship. She was someone who knew how to operate it at an expert level. Jake began to suspect that Alex Stone was not her real name, and this transport ship was not what it appeared to be. As evening came, Alex prepared to leave again. I'll be back tomorrow night. The ship needs to be ready to fly. It'll be ready, Jake promised. Alex started to go. then stopped. "Jake, thank you for not asking questions." After she left, Danny looked at Jake nervously. "Boss, I think we're in trouble." Jake looked at the ship that was becoming more mysterious by the hour. "Maybe, but we took the job and we're going to finish it." He just hoped they would live to spend the credits. Jake woke up on the floor of the docking bay after working through most of the night. His back hurt and his eyes felt like sand, but the ship was almost ready. Danny had gone home around midnight, leaving Jake alone with the mysterious transport. That was becoming more puzzling every hour. He stood up and stretched, looking at the work they had completed. The engines were running better than new. The hull repairs were finished. All the electronic systems had been upgraded and tested. But Jake still felt like he was missing something important about this ship. The computer system bothered him the most. It was too smart, too responsive. When he ran diagnostic programs, the computer seemed to anticipate what he wanted to check. Next, it offered suggestions for improvements that were beyond what any civilian transport should need. Danny arrived early with coffee and breakfast. "Morning, boss. How much more work is left?" "Just the navigation calibration," Jake said, taking the coffee gratefully. "But I want to run one more full system check first." They spent the morning going through every system on the ship. Everything worked perfectly, maybe too perfectly. Jake had repaired hundreds of ships in his career, and none of them had ever run this smoothly after an overhaul. "Danny, bring up the navigation system. I want to check the star chart database one more time." Danny connected his tablet to the navigation computer and started downloading the database files. "Boss, there's something weird here. The computer is showing me files that aren't supposed to exist." Jake looked over Danny's shoulder at the tablet screen. Mixed in with normal navigation data were files marked with codes he did not recognize. "Try opening one of those coded files." Danny selected a file and entered his access code. The screen flashed and suddenly displayed a message. "Identity confirmed. Royal Transport Whisper. Captain authorization required." Jake felt his blood turn cold. Royal Transport. That meant this ship belonged to someone in the Imperial government, someone very high up in the Imperial government. "Danny, back out of that file right now." But it was too late. The computer had already recognized their access attempt and was displaying more information. Ship specifications appeared on the screen, showing capabilities that made Jake's head spin. Adaptive camouflage systems that could make the ship invisible to most sensors. Quantum shields that could deflect military-grade weapons. Engine modifications that could outrun Imperial Navy fighters. And then Jake saw the name that made everything clear. At the top of the ship's registry, in official Imperial script, were the words, "Personal transport of Her Majesty Queen Liana Frost, Sovereign of the Centauri Empire." "Oh no," Danny whispered. "Boss, we've been working on the Queen's ship." Jake stared at the screen, trying to process what this meant. Queen Liana Frost was one of the most powerful rulers in known space. The Centauri Empire controlled dozens of star systems and commanded fleets that could level planets. And somehow, her personal ship had ended up in his small repair shop on a backwater station. "Danny, delete that file from your tablet. Right now." Danny's hands shook as he tried to clear the data, but the computer would not let him. A new message appeared. "Security protocol activated. Maintenance log recorded. Captain authorization required to continue." Before Jake could figure out what to do next, alarms started blaring throughout the station. The docking bay's communication system crackled to life with an announcement that made Jake's stomach drop. "Attention all personnel. This station is now under Imperial security lockdown. All ships are grounded until further notice. Imperial Guard forces are boarding for inspection. Do not attempt to leave your assigned areas." Jake looked out the bay window and saw military ships surrounding the station. Big ships with enough firepower to turn New Haven into scrap metal. This was not a routine inspection. Someone was looking for something specific. "They're looking for this ship," Jake said quietly. Danny was trying not to panic. "What do we do?" "Boss, if they find us with the Queen's ship, they'll think we stole it." Jake heard footsteps in the corridor outside the docking bay. Heavy boots moving in formation. Military boots. "Hide behind the ship. Stay quiet, no matter what happens." The docking bay doors burst open, and soldiers in Imperial Guard uniforms rushed in. They moved like professionals, checking corners and securing the area in seconds. Their weapons were drawn and ready. Behind the soldiers came a man in an officer's uniform. He was tall and serious-looking, with gray hair and the bearing of someone used to being obeyed. Jake could see captain's insignia on his collar. "You must be Jake Martinez," the captain said. "I'm Captain Ben Harper, Imperial Guard. We need to talk." Jake tried to keep his voice steady. "What can I do for you, Captain?" "You can tell me about the ship you've been working on." "The one registered to Alex Stone." Jake realized there was no point in lying. These people already knew everything. "It's a transport ship. I've been doing repairs." Captain Harper walked around the ship, examining Jake's work. "Good repairs. Professional. Work. When will it be ready to fly?" "It's ready now," Jake said. "Just finished the final calibrations." "Excellent." Captain Harper turned back to Jake. "Mr. Martinez, what I'm about to tell you is classified information. If you repeat it to anyone, you'll spend the rest of your life in an Imperial prison. Do you understand?" Jake nodded. "This ship belongs to Queen Lyanna Frost. She has been using it to travel secretly through the outer territories on a matter of Imperial security. Yesterday, her mission was compromised, as she had to make an emergency landing here." Jake felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Alex Stone is really Her Majesty the Queen, yes. And right now she's in more danger than you can imagine. Captain Harper's expression grew grim. "There are forces within the Empire who want the Queen dead. They know she's here, and they're coming for her. We have maybe an hour before they arrive." "Where is she now?" Jake asked. "Safe, for the moment. But she needs this ship ready to fly immediately." Captain Harper looked Jake directly in the eyes. "Mr. Martinez, your Queen needs your help. Will you give it?" Jake thought about his symbol. Life as a mechanic. He thought about the bills on his desk and the quiet days in his repair shop. He thought about Alex Stone, who had trusted him with the most important ship in the Empire. "What do you need me to do?" Captain Harper smiled for the first time since entering the bay. "Keep working. Make sure this ship can get our Queen home safely." Jake nodded and turned back to his work. He was no longer just a mechanic trying to pay his bills. He was now part of something much bigger and much more dangerous. Behind the ship, Danny stayed hidden and tried not to make any noise. But he could hear everything, and he understood that their lives had just become very complicated. The Queen of the Centauri Empire needed their help, and Jake Martinez was not the kind of man who let people down. Captain Harper's soldiers spread out around the docking bay, while Jake continued his final checks on the ship. The Queen's transport was ready to fly, but Jake could see tension in every face around him. These were experienced soldiers, and they were scared. 20 minutes later, Alex Stone returned to the bay, but now Jake saw her differently. She moved with the confidence of someone who commanded star fleets and ruled billions of people. Even in her simple gray jumpsuit, Queen Lyanna Frost carried herself like royalty. "Captain Harper," she said, acknowledging her security chief with a nod. "Status report. The ship is ready, Your Majesty. Mr. Martinez has done excellent work, but we have a problem." The Queen looked at Jake with those same green eyes, but now he could see the intelligence and strength behind them. What kind of problem? Governor Ryan Cross knows you're here. His forces are moving to intercept us before we can leave the system. Jake had heard of Governor Cross. He controlled the outer territories for the Kai Empire and was supposed to be one of the Queen's most trusted officials. Why would your own governor want to stop you? Queen Liana's expression grew cold. Because Governor Cross has been selling Imperial weapons to rebel factions. I came here to gather evidence of his crimes, and he found out about my investigation. Captain. Harper activated a portable display screen showing the space around New Haven Station. Red dots marked enemy ships moving in from all directions. Cross has hired mercenary fleets. They'll be here in 30 minutes. Danny emerged from behind the ship, unable to stay hidden any longer. Your Majesty, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Over here, but ... there are too many of them. How can one ship get past all those enemies? The Queen looked at Danny with surprise, then smiled slightly. You must be Danny Clark, Jake's apprentice. Jake, you've trained him well. He asks the right questions. Jake felt confused. How do you know Danny's name? I know everything about the people I trust with my life, the Queen said. Jake Martinez, 34 years old, best mechanic on New Haven Station. Former military engineer who left service after his unit was killed in the Vega campaign. Number. Criminal record, pays his bills on time, helps his neighbors when they need repairs done for free. Jake stared at her. You investigated me before you brought your ship here. Of course I did. I don't trust my life to strangers. The Queen walked over to the ship's control panel. Danny Clark, 19 years old, apprentice mechanic, top student at New Haven Technical College before he started working for Jake. No. Family, lives alone, spends his free time reading about advanced ship designs. Danny's mouth fell open. You know about my school records? I know about everything that matters, the Queen said, including the fact that both of you can be trusted. Captain Harper interrupted. Your Majesty, we need to leave now. Cross's ships are getting closer, but the Queen shook her head. Not yet. There's something else we need to do first. She turned to Jake. I need you to make one more modification to my ship. Something that will give us an advantage Cross won't expect. Jake looked at the ship that was already running better than anything he had ever worked on. What kind of modification? I've seen your work, Jake. You don't just repair ships. You improve them. You find ways to make systems work better than they were designed to work. The Queen smiled. I need you to do that with my engines. Your Majesty, the engines are already running at maximum efficiency. I can't squeeze any more power out of them without risking damage. I'm not talking about more power. I'm talking about different power. The Queen led Jake to the engine compartment. What if you could make the engines produce energy signatures that look like a civilian transport, while actually giving us military-grade speed and maneuverability? Jake thought about the problem. He had seen similar modifications on Smuggler ships, but never on anything this advanced. It would require rewiring the entire power distribution system and rebuilding the engine control computers. That would take hours. How long if Danny helps you? The Queen asked. Danny looked excited despite the danger. I know those systems, boss. If we work together, maybe 2 hours. Captain Harper shook his head. Your Majesty, we don't have 2 hours. Cross's forces will be here in 20 minutes. The Queen looked out the bay window at the enemy ships getting closer. Then we make our stand here. Jake felt his world spinning out of control. Make our stand? Against how many ships? 17 combat vessels, Captain Harper said grimly, plus support ships and boarding parties. We have 6 soldiers, Danny. Side, counting the Imperial Guards in the bay. 7, the Queen corrected. I can fight. Jake realized what they were planning. You want to hold this docking bay against an entire mercenary fleet? Not hold it, the Queen said. Just delay them long enough for you to finish the engine modifications. Once the ship is ready, we make our run. Jake looked around the docking bay. It had good defensive positions and only 2 entrances, but it was still just a repair facility. This is crazy. Jake, the Queen said quietly, I have evidence that could expose corruption throughout the outer territories. Hundreds of worlds are suffering because officials like Governor Cross are more interested in profit than protecting citizens. If I don't get this information back to the capital, those worlds will continue to suffer. Jake thought about all the people he had met over the years. Traders struggling to make honest livings. Families trying to build better lives on frontier worlds. Workers like himself just trying to pay their bills and take care of their neighbors. What do you need me to do? The Queen smiled, and for a moment she looked like Alex Stone again. Fix my ship one more time. Jake turned to Danny. Get the microfusion welder and the spare power couplings. We're going to rebuild these engines from the inside out. Captain Harper began positioning his soldiers around the bay. Your Majesty, you should take cover in the ship. I'll take cover when my mechanic is finished, the Queen said. She picked up a plasma rifle from one of the soldiers. How long since? I qualified expert marksman, Captain. 6 months ago, Your Majesty. Then I haven't forgotten how to shoot. Jake and Danny dove into the engine compartment and began the most important repair job of their lives. Outside, they could hear ships landing and enemy forces preparing to attack. Soon they would be fighting for their lives in a docking bay, on a backwater station. But Jake had made a promise to fix the Queen's ship, and Jake Martinez always kept his promises, even if it killed him. The first explosions shook the docking bay just as Jake finished rewiring the main power coupling. Sparks flew from his tools, and Danny grabbed onto the engine housing to keep from falling. That was the outer door, Captain Harper called from his position near the bay entrance. They're trying to blast their way in. Jake wiped sweat from his eyes and kept working. The engine modification was almost complete, but he needed 10 more minutes to finish the computer programming. Through the bay windows, he could see enemy. Soldiers setting up heavy weapons in the corridor. Danny, connect the backup power line to the secondary engine core, Jake said without looking up from his work. Route it through the artificial gravity generator. Danny crawled under the engine housing with a bundle of cables. Boss, this is going to overload the gravity system. That's the idea. Trust me. Queen Liana crouched behind a shipping container, with her plasma rifle, watching the corridor through the bay windows. She moved like a trained soldier, not like royalty hiding from danger. When enemy troops appeared in the corridor, she fired precise shots that sent them scrambling for cover. Jake, how much longer? She called. 5 minutes, Jake replied, his hands flying over the engine control computer. He was connecting systems that were never meant to work together, creating power flows that would horrify any safety inspector. But desperate times called for desperate engineering. The bay's main door exploded inward in a shower of metal and sparks. Enemy soldiers rushed through the opening, firing weapons that lit up the bay like lightning. Captain Harper's men returned fire from defensive positions around the room. Danny, get down. Jake shouted as plasma bolts flew over their heads. But Danny stayed where he was, connecting cables with steady hands, despite the battle raging around him. Almost got it, boss. Just need 30 more seconds. A grenade rolled across the floor toward their position. Queen Liana saw it and dove toward Jake and Danny, tackling them behind the ship's landing gear just as the explosion sent shrapnel flying everywhere. Are you hurt? She asked, checking them both for injuries. We're okay, Jake said, then looked at his work. The explosion had damaged some of his connections, but the main system was still intact. Danny checked the power flow. To the third engine. Danny ran a quick diagnostic on his tablet. "It's working, boss. All engines show green." Jake made the final connections and activated his modifications. The ship's engines came online with a sound like singing crystal. Power flowed through systems in ways that defied normal engineering, but somehow it all worked together. Engines ready. Jake shouted over the noise of battle. Captain Harper laid down covering fire while his soldiers began falling back toward the ship. "Your Majesty, we need to go now." But as they moved toward the ship, more enemy soldiers poured into the bay. Jake realized they were surrounded, with no clear path to escape. "There are too many of them," Danny said, fear creeping into his voice. Jake looked around the bay at all his equipment and spare parts. Then he smiled. Maybe too many for soldiers, but not too many for a mechanic. He ran to his tool storage and grabbed a plasma welder. "Danny, remember that power coupling we discussed last week? The one that would overload if you connected it." "Wrong?" Danny's eyes went wide as he understood. "Boss, that could take out half the bay. That's what I'm counting on." Jake connected his plasma welder to the bay's main power grid, bypassing every safety system he could find. If his calculations were right, the resulting power surge would overload the station's electrical systems and shut down all the lights in this section. Everyone get ready to run in the dark. Jake called to the Queen and her soldiers. He activated his jury-rigged power coupling and dove for cover. The bay's lights flickered once, then went out completely. Emergency lighting tried to come on, but immediately failed as the power surge fried every electrical system in the area. In the darkness, Jake heard confused shouts from the enemy soldiers. They had been advancing in formation, but now they could not see where they were going. "Now!" Queen Liana shouted. Jake felt his way to the ship's boarding ramp and climbed inside. Danny was right behind him, followed by the Queen and her soldiers. Captain Harper came last, firing blind shots into the darkness to keep the enemy confused. "Jake, can you fly this thing?" the Queen asked as they reached the bridge. "I can fix anything that flies," Jake said, settling into the pilot's seat. "Flying. It is just applied mechanics." The ship's engines responded to his touch like they had been waiting for him all their lives. His modifications worked perfectly, giving them power and speed that no civilian transport should have, while making their energy signature look completely harmless. They lifted off from the docking bay and headed for open space. Behind them, New Haven Station grew smaller as Jake pushed the engines to maximum power. "Jake, there are 17 enemy ships between us and the hyperspace jump point," Captain Harper said, monitoring the tactical display. Jakes smiled and activated his engine modifications. "Danny, remember what I taught you about thinking like the ship instead of thinking like the pilot?" Danny nodded, understanding immediately. The ship wants to go home. Jake let the Queen's transport do what it was designed to do. The modified engines made them invisible to most sensors, while giving them speed that surprised even him. They slipped past enemy ships that were looking for a military vessel, not a harmless civilian transport. When Governor Cross's flagship finally detected them, they were already at the jump point. "This is Governor Cross," came a voice over the communication system. "Unknown vessel, you are ordered to return immediately or be destroyed." Queen Liana activated the ship's transmitter. "This is Queen Liana Frost, and you are under arrest for treason." The last thing they heard before jumping to hyperspace was Governor Cross screaming orders at his ships. 3 days later, Jake was back in his repair shop when Queen Liana arrived for one final visit. This time she wore the blue and gold uniform of Imperial royalty, with guards who looked like they could conquer planets. "Your Majesty," Jake said, not sure how to act around a real queen. "Just Liana will do fine," she said with the same smile he remembered from Alex Stone. "I came to thank you and make you an offer." Jake looked around his small, cluttered shop. What kind of offer, Royal Engineer, you would be responsible for? Maintaining all ships in the Imperial fleet. The salary would solve your money problems forever. Jake thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Thank you, but no. I like my shop. Queen Liana laughed. I thought you might say that. So I have a different offer. She handed him a datapad showing a contract. Official maintenance contractor for Imperial ships in this sector. You'll get more work than you can handle. All of it legal and well-paying. Jake read the contract and felt his eyes go wide. The payment terms would make him rich. This is too much. It's exactly what you're worth, the Queen said. Jake Martinez, you saved my life and probably my empire. Let me return the favor. 6 months later, Jake's repair shop was the busiest facility on New Haven Station. Danny had been promoted to full mechanic and was training his own apprentice. Lisa Wong's parts business was thriving with all the new customers. Jake still lived in the same small apartment and still got grease under his fingernails every day. But now he worked on ships that belonged to admirals and ambassadors, and sometimes he got messages from very high-ranking people thanking him for his excellent service. He never saw Queen Liana again, but sometimes he found small gifts in his shop. A bottle of expensive wine from the royal cellars. A set of tools made from rare metals. A handwritten note that simply said, "Thank you." Jake would read these notes and remember the night when Alex Stone had walked into his shop with a simple request. He had repaired what seemed like an ordinary ship, not knowing it belonged to a queen. But he had learned something important that night. Sometimes the most ordinary-looking jobs turned out to be the most extraordinary adventures. And sometimes a simple mechanic could change the fate of an empire. One repair at a time, that Jake Martinez went back to fixing ships, because that was what he did. He fixed things, and he fixed them right. And somewhere in the galaxy, a queen remembered. The human who had helped her save her throne with nothing but skill, courage, and a plasma welder.